All right, everyone, welcome and thank you so much for joining our expert session webinar. My name is Bodo Sieber, the CEO of Tagmarshal. That means Chief Everything Officer, if you have ever wondered. And I am very excited to welcome you to our session, which is entitled How Sand Valley is Taking Player Experience to the Next Level While Optimizing Efficiency. And delighted to have Derek Guzman join us. Derek, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I am doing well. Sun is out in Wisconsin, maybe breaking into 40 degrees today, so balmy.
Wow, so you're wearing shorts?
Yes, I've got shorts underneath my, below my suit. Yes, sir.
Nice one. Derek, excited to have you, and of course representing an amazing top 100 golf facility. Why don't you do us a favor and introduce Sand Valley and what's important to you and the vision for Sand Valley, and then also yourself and how you got to be there.
Yeah, definitely. So just very quickly, my name is Derek Guzman, PGA Head Pro at Sand Valley. This will be my 5th year there. Very briefly, kind of my backstory, and maybe this will tie into, how we even, I think we talked in our pre-meeting, kind of how the step-by-step really parallels nicely with Tagmarshal, but literally took a college degree in geology and started washing carts back home on Long Island. Was able to parlay that somehow into a kind of shop role, assistant pro role at a very nice club in New Jersey, Bergen County, New Jersey. Was able to then get winter jobs out in Palm Desert, California, kept incrementally just adding some responsibilities. Each place I went, each season I returned, got to Sand Valley in 2019 as their tournament coordinator. Again, just kind of fell into something where the head pro of the outside operations, basically the bag drop, the starters and the Rangers, he took a job in Indiana to get back home to family. They must have seen something I was doing with the buddies trips and maybe my organization, who knows, was lucky enough to be interim head pro to finish out that 2019 season and have not relinquished my position since. So going strong at Sand Valley now, entering my 5th year, 4th as the head pro. A little bit about Sand Valley, part of the Dream Golf umbrella. So that's going to be the Kaiser, that Kaiser brand. It's not Michael Kaiser Sr. at Sand Valley. It is his 2 children, Michael Jr. and Chris. They are part of Dream Golf. That's Bandon, Sand Valley, and Cabot. Probably more to come. But yeah, it's Sand Valley started before I got there. 2016, we were like 7 or 8, 9 holes of the Sand Valley course operating out of like a shipping container. That was our pro shop. That was our check-in spot. That was where you met your caddies. And if anybody's been to Sand Valley, it has been a meteoric rise with how different we look now. About to open up the Lido, which is our private course offering across the street. Yes, some guests will be able to play it. Don't ask me. I cannot get you on there. That's the hottest ticket in golf right now. And then Sedge Valley, that'll be another resort course that's coming online. So we are excited. We're going to quickly go from 3 courses to 5 here with no plans of stopping. So that's myself and that's Sand Valley.
That's amazing. Thank you. And we're obviously very familiar with your friends over at Bandon. And where the Kaiser vision is always, if there's an ocean with amazing cliffs, that's build a golf course. It seems you don't have an ocean. So how come you ended up in the middle of Wisconsin?
Yeah. So at least the storybook goes that Michael and Chris were out there, and Michael Sr. was joining them, and he goes, "Well, we can't do this. There's no ocean." And someone said, "Yes, but there's an ocean of sand." And that's kind of the storybook kind of line. Whether that was said or not, who knows? But it does make for a phenomenal quote in a book. So yes, we have an ocean of sand.
It's part of the folklore now. So you're on 2 courses right now. You have a short course, aptly called the Sandbox, right?
The Sandbox, yep. And that is like our nightclub on grass.
and you've got another 2 going online. So, I mean, this is just the most phenomenal evolution, seeing that you've only been around for a few years. Just briefly explain your location, which I think is quite genius in terms of how you can attract people.
Yeah. So it is still a little remote. We are in pretty much dead central Wisconsin, but when you start to break it down, we are not that far from a few major cities. So 3.5 hours from Chicago, 3.5 hours from Minneapolis, about just under 2 hours from our capital here in Wisconsin, Madison. So it's not that hard to do a day trip. It's probably, and we spoke about this offline, it's probably just far enough away from those major cities where we kind of force them to get a room for the night, which is nice. You probably don't want to do a 3.5 hour drive after 36 holes. But when you start thinking about, your ability to drive in from Chicago, like I said, or, getting a flight to Madison, and it's just a couple hours from there, you will feel like you're on Mars. You may feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, but honestly, it's not that hard to get to, which is really nice. So we do get quite a bit of people, local guys from Chicago, Minneapolis, those bordering states, but it is quickly becoming, just as easy for us to welcome somebody from Texas, or just as common that you'll get somebody from Texas as you will from Chicago at this point. So really cool.
No, it is indeed. So we're today going to talk about how you take play experiences to the next level. Obviously marveling already at the amazing design and setup that you have, but this all does not matter unless you execute out on the course, right? So that's what we have to talk about, and also how you use technology to get efficiencies to do this really well. So if you don't mind, a brief introduction to Tagmarshal. So I am German born and raised, as you can hear with my accent is not from Georgia, where we are based in Atlanta. We have been at this now for 7 years. This might be eight years actually. We have about 500 partners that we work with, and obviously very proud to have some of the very best among those, including Bandon, like we've mentioned, and Sand Valley, Pebble Beach, many others, but also really amazing private clubs like Valhalla, Oakmont, Baltusrol, to name a few. We also work internationally. That's Canada, Ireland, Scotland, you name it. So there's some, like, if we were to ever be lucky enough to not have to work so hard and do a golf trip, we could put quite an itinerary together. But the main thing for us is that we get to learn from all these managers, including Derek, obviously, and what's important to them, so we can then filter that back into our system, and then also filter it back into how we coach and teach people to use the system. And this is really something that we really cherish. We also take partners to the European Tour, the DP World Tour, and help the USGA with data and research wherever we can. So this is quite important for us to stay in tune. Somebody's just turned me on in the office here, and that's really not helping, guys. I'm hearing myself. Okay, so let's jump ahead. And first, for you, Derek, and I would like to launch a poll to ask how many people that we have online what they think. What makes or breaks a player experience? Because we can talk about player experience, but we need to contextualize, right? There's some things that are extremely important, and some things maybe not that important. So we have to prioritize. We have to do certain things really well. So out of this list here, Derek, course design, course conditioning, clubhouse and amenities. You mentioned you operated out of a shipping container, and still people were excited, right? Pace and flow of play, playing partners who's in my group, accessibility and tee time availability, value and cost. Like, while I turn on this poll, what do you think are the top 3 here that matter the most?
Yeah, definitely. I think the layup is going to have to be the pace and flow. I would think that's important. Again, I'll keep this specific to Sand Valley. We've got, like I said, 2 courses now, going to be, or 3, going to be 5 soon. People are going to want to play more than 1 round in a day. So I'm going to say you're going to want to keep them moving. You're going to want to keep the flow going. They're going to want to, have time in between their rounds to eat some lunch and, jam in as many holes as they possibly can to play. Course design, course conditioning. This is a debate we launched on offline about, I have a theory that the best designed courses don't need a single blade of green grass. I think that the design will, speak for itself. So I'll go course design. And then the third thing that's really important to Sand Valley specifically, that value cost. And that's just going to be, that's just really the vision of the ownership group, especially when you start thinking about the courses that are around us. Whistling Straits are around on the Straits courses, I think north of $500 at this point. Erin's not far behind. It's incredibly important for us to have a 2 as that first number in our cost of a tee time. So I'm going to go flow, design, and value cost.
Thank you. It seems like if I were to end the poll here, which I'm going to do, and share the results. So our audience believes flow of play, course conditioning, and course design to be top ranking. It's always great to read the room a little bit. I think you're touching on something really important, because obviously we don't get to play at a Sand Valley every weekend, right? But we go down to our local and have a bit of fun. And normally those designs are maybe not quite impressive, but because we are watching the Masters and we're watching the big PGA tournaments, we somehow expect that things need to look amazing. So your comment around course design, if it's done right, not needing to have the best conditioning, is a really interesting perspective. Have you seen that somewhere where you felt like, I don't mind, right? Because this does exactly what it's supposed to.
Yeah, I think I'll be a homer here, and I'll say Mammoth Dunes specifically. I would argue that course probably plays better the drier, deader it is. Just the way you get to use the ground, the unpredictability of the bounce you're going to get. Honestly, with a place like Mammoth Dunes, if it's too lush and it's too green, you're going to get some like hanging lies, and you're going to end up at spots where the ball wasn't supposed to end there. You're supposed to get down to that kind of flat spot. You're supposed to have a tougher angle in, and when the conditions are perfect and the grass is just catching every ball that lands on it, you're not supposed to have that easy of an angle in. You're not supposed to be on the upslope, short-sided, or whatever it may be. There are areas where the ball is supposed to funnel to that. Again, as a homer, I think Mammoth Dunes would play better, if there wasn't a single blade of living grass out there. And apologies to our superintendent, he makes sure every blade of grass is perfectly kept. But that's just a small little theory I've got going.
Yeah, we're talking to a golf purist here, which is, I think, right in line with the dream golf vision, right? And,
right.
It's great to have this discussion. So just to bring things back to what's the market saying, right? So here's a broad USGA research that was done and asking players, what do you believe is crucial to your enjoyment? And 82% pushed course conditioning to the top. Then in between that is who's in my group, like who am I playing with? Obviously that's key because I'm spending 4.5 hours with my playing partners. And then very close to that is indeed a pace and flow of play. So it seems like if you want to create value for people, if you do those two things well, they will say thank you. Interestingly enough, more recent, the NGCOA has done a broad-based study asking operators, what do you believe are the top factors towards the play experience? And again, also flow of play came up top 3 here for them alongside conditioning at number 1. So it's really aligned, but it seems to have picked up more prominence from the operators off late. So you're obviously way ahead of the game. You're having really dialed into this and found ways to do things as well as you possibly can, which is obviously what we're going to talk about. But let me add one more bit of research that actually came out of Wisconsin. And for those of you who've been to Wisconsin, the fact that there's strings cards mentioned here apparently gives it away.
Yep, that is true. That is a dead giveaway that Wisconsin conducted this.
Yeah, like you guys even, I know you have got your Spotted Cow homegrown beers, and the term beer angel, I think, is also comes out of Wisconsin, so you really know your stuff. So this is from the University of Wisconsin Stout. They did this research with the USGA looking into measuring the player experience, and they found that there's 1,000 touch points in the player experience. That obviously sounds crazy, but if you think about it, booking your round, loading your clubs into your boot, driving through the gate, all of those are little touch points, and they wanted to understand which ones of those delight people, which ones float in the middle, which ones frustrate people. And what's really interesting here is that out of these thousand things that happen in a round of golf, corrective pace of play actions is the overall worst score. So corrective pace of play actions, Derek, you have obviously played a lot of golf in many states. Have you come across an interaction with somebody who corrected you or your group, or somebody has told you that something like this happened? What does corrective pace of play action look like if it's done badly? Or maybe you can imagine it.
Yeah. So you're asking kind of a negative interaction here?
Yes. Yeah. What would that look like?
Yeah. It's probably, and I'll just go of what's the opposite of what we want to do. It's probably meeting somebody at the worst possible point. So like, I'm thinking right in the middle of the fairway, right? Just not having any spatial awareness of where you're going to make this kind of first interaction or second or third or whatever interaction, just no spatial awareness of like where the heck this scolding is happening. And then, secondly to that, just unbelievably short, not very not very incisive. There's nothing constructive about their criticism, right? It was just, you stopped me as I was like ready to pull the trigger in the fairway, and you told me that I'm 2 holes behind. I've got nothing constructive out of that. You stopped me at the worst possible time, and like, you're getting paid to try to help me get back on track. You were the opposite of an educator there, and we'll get into that, being an educator on the course. You basically just stopped me at the worst time and gave me nothing constructive on how to fix it. So that's a horrible Ranger interaction for me.
And you're quite right. And likely you would find the word slow as part of that delivery, right? So, and then what does a player say? Well, firstly, get out of my way. I paid money to play here. It's not us, it's the guys in front of us, like every single time, right? And it becomes combative, players get defensive, and especially if they're being called slow, which is not something that you ever want to call a player if you can avoid it, right? It's like saying somebody's got a low IQ. It just doesn't compute. Players get very defensive. So they're saying this is the overall worst thing that can happen, and the way you described it was very diplomatic. We've seen this grunty person come over and say, get on with it, you're slow, right? And that's really not helpful, right? But the conundrum here is that other people's speed, so if people in front of me don't get on with it and I'm being held up, is equally as frustrating. And then on the flip side, and this is quite surprising, positive Ranger etiquette receives the top score simply because it's probably so unheard of. And then obviously green and open tees, conditioning, all of those, open tees meaning I can play, I don't have to wait. Conditioning, all of those things are rating high. So it seems like, according to this really in-depth research that the USGA has done here, there's some things here that we need to focus on. And one of the items is the Marshal and Ranger role in particular, or is not well liked. And obviously if that then gets delivered poorly, then that poor person's got no chance of getting anywhere with those players, right? And then we're creating issues where we don't have to. So I'm delighted, obviously, that you have gotten on top of this really well and made it a hallmark of how you deliver your experience at Sand Valley. But let's talk about the technology side a little bit, because if you try to do this the way that you used to do things 10 years ago, it would be really difficult and labor intensive. And I'm not sure if it's even possible, especially at such a ranging facility as you have it, right? So just from your perspective, do you want to do a quick introduction into the obviously using the Tagmarshal system that you do use, and then I can outline a little bit how other clubs use it.
Yeah, definitely. So we are using system number 1 over there. So just the walking, we are a walking only facility. So another challenge that we have, but most groups take a caddy. So we'll just focus on caddied groups. We'll have our starter slip a tracker into the caddy bib, and basically they're off to the races then. So that'll pull up on, where that tracker is. It's a little GPS unit. It'll pull up exactly where they are on our golf course, which is obviously mapped by Tagmarshal. And we can start to figure out, where a group is on the golf course. So primarily we are using just that kind of first walking group tag. So Bodo, I'll let you talk about the other pieces, and then we can dive into exactly how Sand Valley uses that, maybe after you talk about the other devices if you want.
Yes, perfect. So we're going to show what you and the team see, right, in terms of the system backend.
Yep.
But thanks for teeing me up here. So like I mentioned earlier, we work with 500 partners now, and obviously only very few are like Sand Valley. There's lots of them that have got golf carts as a primary mode of getting golfers around. And for those, we have 2 types of trackers. One is a tracker that's just hidden away in a golf cart and tracks the cart movement and sends data back to our system. And then we do also have an ultra bright GPS that is a more recent addition that we've had for the last 2-3 years now, that does more the traditional GPS functions. But again, all of these units, their primary job is to send data to our system, and then those 2-way units also receive data back so the players can self-manage. And of course, you're now in a position where you have a really healthy staff contingent to make sure that you to deliver on that amazing experience that you're trying to create. Many of our clubs are very slim on the ground. So for them to have technology to rely on and manage things from the pro shop is even more important. But let's jump ahead and look at, you can think of this as Waze or Google Maps of course management, if you will. So let's jump ahead and look at what this looks like on a live map. So this is because obviously now you're still winterized, so we couldn't go and grab a play day, but this is what things might look like on any day. So what do you see here? And I could show any other course now. I could go and open up Kiowa. I could go open up another one of the southern partners that we work with, and you'd immediately know what's going on, even though it's not your course. But what do you see here, and how would your team now work with this information?
Yeah, so maybe I'll just quickly, maybe this is a good time to talk about kind of those pace buckets we talked about, and just kind of set the philosophy of Sand Valley first. So one of the things that we face that might be different from a private club is we really have to be transparent, and we really don't get, and I think this is probably a good thing, we really don't get those kind of special relationships that a private club may have, where it's very difficult to approach Mr. McGillicuddy, the club president, that he's playing slow again, right? We might have 40 different club presidents that are playing our course at the same time. They're not our club president. They're another guest, and they're all getting treated the same. So one of the things that the Pace of Play team really harped on was, let's get our rangers to be more transparent, to be educators. We always come back to that word, and data is the perfect thing to educate, a guest with. It's right there on the screen. These are the facts. This is how we're going to work through things. So I told the story to Bodo. I'm big into, survival stuff and Green Berets and all this different type of stuff. And I was listening to a podcast one night, like late at night, and this guy mentioned the PACE system, and it's a plan for, it's like a survival plan of how you escalate the actions you're taking to keep yourself safe. And basically it goes primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. And I'm like in and out of sleep, and I'm, oh my God, PACE. I wrote this down. There's something here. Took it to our director of golf. And we came up with the PACE system. So our primary ranger actions, our alternate ranger actions, contingency, and emergency, all ranger actions. And those buckets, those tactics we use in each of those escalating pieces get smaller and smaller. So our primary bucket That's our layup. That's going to be the easiest stuff we can possibly do. That's going to be having a ranger on the third tee, welcoming guys, being visible, offering a drink because a guy, they made up the few minutes that we asked them to. They got back to within one shot within the group ahead. Layup stuff. You start to get into that alternate bucket. They're not, that group is not taking very well to whatever our kind of first actions were. Now we got to get a little more specific. We switch from very spatial reasoning, hey, get back to within one shot of the group in front, to a more time-sensitive goal. Play these next 3 holes in an average pace of 9 minutes. Okay, that's not working. Contingency bucket, we're running out of options. We're maybe skipping a hole by the time we get to that point. Emergency, we've got pretty much one option left. That's our smallest bucket. We probably got to get you off the golf course. So as a philosophy of being transparent, using the pace buckets, being educators, boom, we now look at this and I can tell with certainty where we have to go and basically what group, to an extent, what group is in what kind of bucket, right, Bodo? So I look at, group number 17 right there. They're magenta. So maybe you can speak to the colors if you want, but I recognize that they're holding up a couple of the groups behind them. Hopefully this would not have been the first time they were spoken to. It looks like they're on maybe 6T at that point, maybe five green, 6T. So that shouldn't be the first time they were spoken to. So that tells me probably the next time we go talk to them, we have to be more in that alternative bucket. So we're probably going to put some type of time goal on them to finish that front 9, give them 3 holes. Maybe we'll catch them on 6 green or 6T, give them a little leeway on 6 and say 7, 8, 9 got to be played an average of 9 minutes each hole. I'm going to go up to the drink stand. I'll meet you on 10. If you achieve those goals, I'll get drinks, for the group. So that group looks like there's something there. The other thing that we talked a little bit about is, you're seeing, okay, it looks like they're down 6 minutes. I would challenge anybody with a paper and pencil tee sheet to be able to tell me that a group is, and I'll even go smaller than that, 3 minutes off pace. There is no, and if you think you can, I think you're lying. There is no way a paper and pen tee sheet can tell you you're 3 minutes off. And from our, use of Tagmarshal, we know that 3 minutes balloons into 6, balloons into 9. And now we're off to the races trying to catch up. And the first time that a paper and pen tee sheet would see this is maybe 12, 15 minutes off pace. I'm telling you right now, we're cooked. If we let a group get to 15 minutes off, and this is the first time we're talking to them, we are toast. So being able to click on every group, seeing, okay, 5 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but let's go attack it. I think that's kind of exactly how Sand Valley would use this, screen. And Bodo, I'll let you chime in, and then maybe I'll talk a little bit about kind of that caddy relationship, how they didn't believe me that 3 minutes makes a big deal, and maybe how that relates to a member, just to kind of tie it to private clubs. But I'll let you go off to the races here.
Yeah, thanks. I think this PACE idea is obviously quite apt, and it's great that you have adopted that. So I think just to add that this is obviously now very obvious for your team what's happening out there, but the logic behind this includes quite a few aspects. And one of the main things why this group number 17 is highlighted as the main issue is not because they're the furthest behind. I'm very certain that this group number 6 over here, that's already on hole, where are they? They're quite a bit further ahead.
Yeah, it looks like they're on 11T.
They might be 7 minutes behind, right? But this is not the primary factor. Is what is the biggest risk to your field right now? And this group number 17 is the biggest risk because their trend is negative. They're getting worse. You can see that. First 2 holes were fine. Hole 3, 4, 5, they're getting worse, right? So you need to engage. And then also the biggest thing is they're already impacting 2 groups behind them who are delayed. So if we don't catch that, then soon going to impact 3 groups, then 4 groups, then 5 groups, right? And you cannot make that up. Like you said, once you're 15 minutes in, the damage is done. And then you have this compound effect, right? Where if you have 10 groups impacted, each by 20 minutes, the compound hours that you're taking away from these people out there that they will have about as well is quite significant, right? Because that means wait times, that means we can't play to the optimal flow. So
and Bodo, let me chime in here, because the bar graphs kind of got me thinking of something. You know, when you talk about you know, the group's always saying it's not me, it's the group in front. There may be some truth to that. And we talked a little bit offline of making sure, and we'll get to it, our Rangers are in the right place at the right time, or at least talking to the right group. So if you look at that progress bar, and if there were, you know, if they're, you know, finished with the front nine and you've got a little more there, but, you know, let's say, okay, hole 1 was good, hole 2 was good. Yes, hole 3 took some time. Let's say holes 4 and 5 were back in the green, right? You know, they might have just had a tough hole. There's trees down the left or whatever. And yeah, they took some time on that third hole, but 4 of their 5 holes were on pace. You know, that's probably that, you know, that's being deliberate. That's using data. That's probably not the group that is, you know, messing everything up. And if they were, you know, even if that was still the worst, there's nothing like, you know, going over there and having that positive Ranger interaction of like, you know, hole 3 gets everybody. Looks like you were a little slow. You know, you're right back on pace with holes 4 and 5. You know, the rest of the holes are not as hard as hole 3, right? That's being able to use that bar graph and seeing, is this actually a group that just had a little blip in the radar, or are they trending bad? And then second to that, we can see, as, you know, as the managers of the Ranger team, did that interaction help? Did they go, you know, 4 red lines in a row, a Ranger talked to them, and now their next 3 are green? Okay, we made some progress there, right? There, whatever bucket we were in, looks like that problem got neutralized. So that little live bar graph is super important for us. And I think, like I said, being deliberate, is this actually the group that is trending bad, or was it a small blip in the radar? And how you can turn that into a positive Ranger interaction, and that you weren't anywhere near hole 3. You know, yeah, I know, I saw, you know, I have the data to see it. I know what happened, right?
Yeah, I recently told a friend of mine who played a course in Spain where he sliced his ball, just looking at the data, right?
Right.
Right. And he's like, how did you know? Well, there you go, right? So, but I think the key is that this allows your team to be very accurate in terms of where do they need to be. And also, like you mentioned, and I'd love for you to get back to that, why does 3 minutes matter? Why do we want to get on top of this early?
Right. Yeah. So when when it's 3 minutes, it doesn't sound like a lot. And that's probably not an amount of time that we're going to take, you know, to a guest. That's not really a guest facing comment. Hey, you're 3 minutes off. They're never going to understand that 3 minutes is a big deal. We will take that to the caddy, pulling a caddy aside, you know, on the tee. We like to do things on the tee, not on the greens, not in the middle of fairways. So on that next tee, pull a caddy over. Hey, you know, your group is 3 minutes off through 3 holes, through 2 holes, whatever it is, nice and early on. The caddies used to look at us like we had, you know, 9 heads. That's ridiculous. 3 minutes. That's terrible. You guys don't know what you're doing. We're fine. That quickly balloons into, like I said, 10, 12, 15. They you know, it will. And now caddies who have come back multiple years, when I tell them, or when a Ranger tells them, hey, we're a few minutes off, they get it. They recognize that's a big deal. You know, let the experiences build up. And we were relating, you know, the caddy could be the member, right? You know, the first time you tell the club president that he's 3 minutes off, he's going to want to fire you as the pro. You know, he doesn't want to hear that his pro's telling him he's 3 minutes off. You know, if it's a trend and he finishes his round, you know, 15, 18 minutes slow, or, you know, he's late to another meeting, you can pull him in the office. You can show him exactly how his round tracked. And it's not gotcha moments, it's educating moments. Hey, you know, when you started looking for your ball on this hole, or when you know, slowed down here, look how it ballooned, you know, to the round. Maybe there's a point where he played a hole fast. You can ask him, well, you know, you looked like you were getting back on track here. How did you play this hole? And it becomes a very open dialogue for, you know, you and your membership group to have, where they're not gotcha moments, they're educating moments. And again, I think, we said offline, facts don't have feelings. This is what happened in the round. How he tracked around his course is exactly what happened. Just educate them. And I think I think you would get your club president to be the biggest advocator. He'd be running into your office. Oh, he was 3 minutes slow on this hole, like, and I fixed it, or it ballooned, or whatever, and everyone's going to buy in because it is very cool when you start diving into the minutia. So that's how 3 minutes matters, right?
Yeah, I like how you're saying facts don't have feelings, and reversely, if there's no transparency, if there's no interaction, and people have to wait, that perception becomes reality, right? It's like I had to wait at every hole, and the round felt like it took 7 hours. You know, that then becomes people's reality, and that's what they take away from their experience, and that then impacts the net promoter score, meaning how did you enjoy your round? Would you come back? Would you tell others good things about it? All they remember is they had to wait, right? And in a private club space, that becomes a culture that is very hard to catch, because some people are extremely vocal about these things. So it really pays to get ahead of it. And like we learned earlier, 74% of players saying it's important to us. Please do this well, right? So jumping ahead, from an efficiencies point of view, how is this helping you guys with resource allocation and getting things done? And because as much as you are blessed with maybe more resources than many clubs, you still have to utilize them so that you can work towards your mission of providing the best possible play experience. Just talk to us a little bit about how is the technology helping you do that? Maybe you as a manager, but also how does it filter through to your team?
No, absolutely. Can we maybe go to the next slide ahead? Is that the one with the daily bar graph? Yes, this is a huge screen for us. So, I guess day to day, it all comes down to, right place, right time. And we could achieve this with, it's hard for us. We really like having a bunch of Rangers out there, having all those different touch points. It's just important for us as a walking only club. But you basically do have a bird's eye view of what's going on. So, you can start to see from your office as a pro who doesn't have a huge Ranger staff, you can see, okay, this group just turned from green to magenta. That's a group I'm keeping an eye on. For me, when I'm down in my office and we've got, 3 or 4 Rangers on each course, a lot of the, what we talked about with those pace buckets and what I can see and gauge how important it is to get out there. We talked a lot about when we were offline, the old culture of Rangering was, oh my God, get on the radio. We got to go, this group, we got to get them off the golf course. There's no saving them. I can look at Tagmarshal. I can look at our pace notes that our Rangers, have. I can get some kind of, hopefully some free data to kind of go there and have my case built and have some facts and be able to address a group. Or I can simply say, look, it doesn't look like, you as the Ranger have exhausted all of your options. There's more meat on the bone for you to tackle before I just come running out there and I'm like a chicken with my head cut off. So, being able to have the facts and really analyze and be deliberate with who we talk to and how drastic the situation is a big one. The other thing I love about this bar graph, and again, I think this goes back to if you don't have a ton of Rangers out there and you can use some historical data, you can start to see where a day, went sideways, and you can hopefully correct it for future days. So when I was shown this graph, I said, okay, looks like our first few groups were decent, maybe a little on the slower side. Looks like we did something to correct them. We had a great stretch going. And I said, okay, right in the middle of the day, I can guarantee you that is a buddy's trip who's playing some type of Ryder Cup. And they slowed us down. Now they got off the golf course and the rounds kind of self-corrected, right? So maybe I didn't stop that in the moment. Maybe the team, didn't get to address that in the moment. Things happen, we're not going to be able to salvage every round. But we have started to take this data and now say, okay, there is a trend that whenever buddies groups are here and we know they're playing a tournament, that's a high focus group. Whether we're adding a starter time, a little block of time on before and after them to buffer them or whatever, you can start to see these trends at a private club, at a public course, whatever it may be. You can use these to start saying, okay, I've identified a problem. You can look at your tee sheet, right? And you can start saying, okay, the whatever the 2 o'clock group was, the McGillicuddy group, damn, they were slow again. Okay, I'm starting to develop trends here, right? So that's how kind of that historical data, even just day to day, helps us, even when we didn't catch it day of, how we can go back in history and see some trends. Like I said, the day-to-day stuff with just, being in the right place at the right time. And then year over year stuff, even, we're doing a crazy project. Tagmarshal has the ability to tell us how long each hole took every single day. We have our pin charts from each day for every hole, and we are starting to correlate play time of a hole versus its pin location. And hopefully there's some trend there where we can send this to our superintendent and say, okay, here is our fast pin setup. Looks like we have 215 rounds on Mammoth Dunes coming up on Saturday. Let's go to the fast pin setup. And that's how we do day to day. That's, same day, day to day, and even year to year, how this data helps us.
Yeah, I think you're making some great points. And it seems to me like this, what you identify as a buddy group, was actually caught, right? Which is important.
Right.
But further to the whole stats, so we can even break this down into T-box wait time, time on fairway, time on green. Obviously, T-box wait time is that's what hurts the most. But what's exciting is how many of our pros start working so well with the superintendent on this common goal of providing the best possible experience. And sometimes simple, like you mentioned earlier, what are the low-hanging fruit that we can tackle? Sometimes simple adjustments, and that might be a slightly easier pin placement, can make a big difference. That might be taking out a bush or something that detracts. And sometimes you might have to do something that's counterintuitive, and that's make one hole a little bit harder so that you buy time for the next hole that's actually otherwise going to get a run on, right? So those things you can only do with data, and the nice thing is that because it's operational data that you look at all the time, you can do these tests, and then you see, is it working? Is it not working? And that's the power of incremental improvement. Because if you eke out 2 minutes here, 1 minute there, 3 minutes here, 1% here, 2% there, like over time and over a season, you have improved by 10, 20%, by 10, 20 minutes, right? So it really adds up.
And here's, we were talking about this. Here's a brief example of how that, when you start looking hole by hole, how that's going to kill you. So if your longest hole to play takes 22 minutes, and your shortest hole to play takes 10 minutes. That's a 12-minute difference. If you're operating on 10-minute intervals, you are guaranteeing a 2-minute backup on average. It just the way, not every group's going to experience that, but on average, you have basically set yourself up already for a wait. So just something really interesting when you start looking at hole by hole, your slowest hole and your quickest hole. If that gap is bigger than your intervals, you're already set up for some type of waiting. So last little bit there.
Yeah, also the halfway house, right? You want some level of control here too, because that's a critical experience portion, but also you need to make sure that you keep people moving through there. So it all adds up, and I think this particular day you're actually getting these people through on what seems to be almost 90% on pace or within 10 minutes. And there's only 1 or 2 that are a little bit out. So that's a good day at the office. Your average round time is 4 hours, 6 minutes, which I just want to add that like a lot of the top end walking courses that we have, their play time is obviously much higher than that. And that's because they're long, they're tough to play. So this is really ambitious. You want to play to 412. Holding yourselves to a really good pace here, but there's reasons for that too, right? Because you don't want people to come just play 18 holes. There's more for them to play, and there's more obviously for your business to be gained out of that too. But let me just jump back one slide here. So this is something that you actually spoke to earlier. This is what we call a track map. So every single round here that I see, I can click on, and if I wanted to know what actually happened to this round 11, 18, I can then go and look at this and I can see their history. Where were the interactions our team had, if there were any, who was in that group, if we are going to that level, which obviously at a private club is essential. And then how did they go, right? And over and above that, there might be geofence breaches. If you have a cart course, all of those things are recorded. And again, like you said earlier, if you have data, you have a completely different way of how you can tackle these challenges. Otherwise, it's emotion, it's hearsay, you hope for the best. And it's not always easy, especially with that group that comes in or that player that comes in fuming, saying, oh, this was a terrible round, I was held up all day. So if you can say, let me check my system, you immediately taken the sting out of that interaction. And very often their perception is way worse than the reality. Let's jump ahead to a very important point, because you're not, like, as much as I love the passion that you have for this, like, there is very clearly a business reason why it is important to you, right? Mm-hmm. So you are tracking, as a resort, the Net Promoter Score. Why do you do that? And what does it mean? Maybe not everyone's familiar.
Yeah, so from what I know, that the NPS was created by airline companies to kind of track, who should they target as an audience, or, for advertising. And it was this whole study of, like, do you target the people who give you a score of, 2s and 3s and 4s to try to fix that? Do you target the people who give you, 8s, 9s, and 10s? And it was created by airline companies to figure out where their energy should go. So how do we use it? Obviously, we want our guests to have the best time ever at Sand Valley. We call ourselves the friendliest resort in America. And it's a great chance to, like you said, just measure what the perception is. A lot of the times, we get a bunch of surveys in from guests, and, 1 or 2 might just be, just something silly where a guest just thought something transpired, and it just is silly. It's not worth digging into. When you start seeing trends, that's where we want to, address our problem. So when the same comment comes up, 8, 9, 10 times in a survey batch, and the scores are particularly low for, we'll just say, pace of play, that NPS was low for the week. Okay, there was probably something that happened that day. We can check who the Rangers were that day. We can check the pace. So it's a nice way to see, where the trends are with how guests are feeling, and then we can track that to the specific day and how our data panned out, and see, was there really something to it?
I think it's very important for us to remember that we're all consumers, right? Somewhere, right? And there's certain things that trigger us. Like, going back to the airline analogy, if my flight's delayed and I have to hang out at the airport for 3 hours and I'm missing meetings on the other side, I'm going to remember that, and next time I might make a decision to choose an airline that's more on time. If I have a fantastic interaction with one of the flight crew and they're really making my experience better, I'm going to remember that, right? So those little things eventually filter out. This was a great experience that I'm telling people about. Oh, this flight I was on with so-and-so was amazing. I definitely book them again. But very often it goes the other way. Like, people tell the bad news as well, right? Like, never again, and they lost my luggage and all that. And it's the same for a golf course. So what are the things we need to do well? Conditioning, flow of play, right? And provide value. And obviously friendly interactions always matter. So further to that, there's some Net Promoter Score research here. And then Derek, you can tell us a little bit how that's impacted you. Yeah. But the USGA have found, and this was from the Innovation Symposium, that this is actually from Players First. They do post-round surveys, much like you use, and they're one of our strategic partners that we love working with. So they found that if a course provides a few simple basics and does those really well, make players feel welcome, create a good flow, and meet on-course staff. Meeting on-course staff is more important than you might think, because in the traditional golf space where we're understaffed and overworked, we think once those people are out there, like, good luck to them, let's hope they have a good time. But this is your business. Out on the golf course is your business. That is when you want to meet on-course staff positive interactions, and you're designing this. That is what happens. I don't think there's anyone going through a round at Sand Valley that doesn't have an on-course interaction with your staff. And what that means is if you do these things well, the net promoter score shoots up. And if people don't feel quite welcome, there's bad flow, and they haven't met anyone out there looking after them, net promoter score tanks. So they're going to say bad things, they might not come back. And here's an immediate correlation between medium to good flow. That's positive towards the net promoter score. If it's bad flow, it immediately has an extremely negative rating. In your case, you might look at, well, does it really matter that you got 5 minutes better year over year, right? Does it really matter that your percentage of groups on pace is up 5%? Well, it seems like it does. Tell us a bit what you found with regards to your net promoter score and how that's trending.
Yeah, definitely. As you can see kind of in that bottom right, our NPS score went way up for pace of play. It was up almost 7 points, which was huge. And I think a lot of the data almost took care of itself, just because, we knew what we wanted to achieve. And it's, again, like Bodo said, it's such low-hanging fruit. Something as simple as the starter mentioning the ranger by name, hey, and where they're going to be. Hey, you're going to see Jimbo on the third tee. He's going to be out there. He's the best. He's going to help you with whatever. Jimbo meets him on the third tee, and they're like, whoa, the starter said you were going to be here. How are you? Whatever. And Jimbo's off to the races. Like, just keeping the promises. Like, hey, we said you're going to see people out here. You immediately saw people out here. Jimbo promised you drinks at the turn if you made up time. He's actually going to be at the turn waiting for you. Like, those little things of right place, right time, transparency, keeping our word, all very important. And, just through that, just by Jimbo being more engaged and being in the right place, he is going to just by default get our round times improved, get more groups on pace. It's not that the strategy really changed. I mean, yes, the pace buckets are a new way to do it, but we really just are keeping our word. And we talked about, the tablet with the pace of play system, could blow at the feet of the most irate guy. Our little internal ranger manual with the pace buckets could blow to the feet of the most pissed off guy on the course. He could look at all the data and he would, he cannot say with a straight face that we are treating him any differently than anybody else. And that's our key. It's just keeping our word, doing the little things that we said we were going to do, being in the right place, picking the right group to talk to, and these things will get better. So yeah, round time, okay, 2 or 3 minutes better, whatever. The perception of how a ranger treated them, of keeping our word, that is what NPS is. That is perception. That skyrocketed for us. And that was awesome. Like I said, I almost want to say that the data was just kind of downstream of doing the things we said we were going to do.
Yeah, but that's what it is, right? If you do the basics really well, and then you prioritize the things that matter to golfers, you're always going to trend up. And right. That's the secret, right?
Right. And it reminds me of my favorite U.S. president, Ulysses S. Grant, not to go off on a huge tangent. Historians will say he got the big things right, and he probably didn't get many of the small things right. Or he got the small things wrong. He got the huge things 100% right. That's all we have to do. Our rangers are not paid, they're not professional rangers. Nobody has professional rangers. They're not paid to nail the small things. They're paid to dial in the big things, right? Just get the big things right, and the small things, whatever's downstream, it'll work out enough, right?
Yeah, and I think you're making a good point here that really also translates to the course down the road, right? Because there's always too many things to do and too few hands to do it. So this is where technology is really so helpful to automate a lot of it, because it's not time well spent for a golf pro to just go 2-3 hours ranger out there and look for problems, right? That's not time well spent. Then you'd rather have know exactly where you need to be there ahead of time, like you be proactive and preventive. And anyone you see en route, you have a friendly interaction with, and you pat them on the back for being nice on pace, because the system tells you that. Because right. Without that, and by pure line of sight, just by looking at distance between groups, it's near impossible to figure out what's happening. And you can only when it's really bad can you actually go and address a group with certainty, but then it's too late, right?
Right.
So this is where a lot of our clubs, they're saying, well, this is great. Let's put this live map on a big screen TV in our clubhouse. in our $50 green fee or in our private club. We want everyone to see that we've got this eye in the sky. And imagine what happens at a private club when this big magenta group comes in on the 18th. Everyone wants to know, who's that? Why are they 10 minutes off, you know?
Right.
Self-policing starts to creep in. And like you mentioned earlier, being able to create profiles on players, knowing who trends, who can I trust with those early tee times based on data, not just perception. And then you can have an education conversation. Look, unfortunately, you've been playing outside of the time we'd like you to play. Would you consider the later tee times?
Right. Or how about this as a PGA pro? Go out and play 9 holes with the guy who's slow and see it for yourself. What a great chance to go play with the pro. I know in the Wisconsin section, they just did a survey that members want their pros to play with them. Just, again, education. Let's go play 9 holes. I bet you I can get you, I bet you I can help us shave a few minutes. It could be as simple as the guy, he likes to walk or whatever, and he's putting his bag in the wrong spot. He's not walking his bag to the back of the green, or he's not parking his cart in the best place. You just got to play 9 holes with him, and you got to educate him on how to play faster. Like, this is super applicable to private clubs too.
No, absolutely. And I think that is the big difference, is that the traditional way of managing this was quite abrasive,
Right.
And then you would find people that have got some sort of perceived authority, and they're a bit grumpy with the members to get them moved, or the players to get them to move on. But they're saying, don't do that to us. Don't do that correction stuff. Like, be nice. We want to play along. And I think one of the key things, because we mentioned, don't tell a player they're slow. One of the things that we've learned is that if you give them different targets, like you're doing that,
right.
Let's get back in position, right? I need you just within 1 shot. Those things people compute, they can work with, and then they're compliant.
Right.
And that makes it constructive. Thank you it's my job to keep us on pace, which we have done. We went through this flying, and a really exciting conversation. If there are any questions that you want to shoot through the Q&A or into the chat, here's one question. Do you have to watch the live map and dashboard all day? That's a question. How do you do that?
I do not. We do have a pace of play manager who directly oversees all the Rangers. I mean, he looks at it, more than me. I always keep it up just in the background. It's always just an open tab. I'm not staring at it, but it's clever enough, and it's intuitive enough to where I can just I'm doing an email, I'm doing a couple emails. It's been 20 minutes. I'll click on the tab. In 15 seconds, I can tell if something's happening. And then maybe I'll hop on the radio and say, hey, have we looked at this? And the Rangers are going to be all over it. Yes, we did. I just talked to them. So I'm not always staring at it, but it's super easy to just have up as a tab and, and click and look at. Rangers, again, hopefully are looking at it as well. And this is almost like a softball question of like, don't get Tagmarshal and just stare at the screen, right? There's so much more to it. It's a rolling snapshot of what's happening. You still have to have your skills. You still have to get out there. You still have to talk to people and use your own eyeballs. It's a great tool to glance at, to figure out where the problem is, but then get off it. Like, don't look at it. Go fix the problem. Use it for the data. Use it, historically you can stare and look at things and try to analyze trends. In the moment, don't get stuck screen watching. And that is something that the first year I think we did get like screen happy and just stare at it and stare at it and stare at it. You got to still use your eyeballs. It's a tool. Look at it, know what your problem is, and then go use your tools and address it.
Yeah, I think you're making a great point. And that is really, and also like with analyzing the data a little bit, you can see these are our key crunch times in a day.
Right.
It's when we need to pay attention. Outside of these times, well, it's okay to check every 10 minutes, right? Or every 20 minutes.
Right.
And that gets you to get more done. And I know a lot of clubs that are trying to reduce labor hours and so on. And they're saying, well, this is great. Like, we know what's going on in the clubhouse. We can even set the system to ping us an alert if somebody's out by 5 or 10 minutes. They can set that up. so that they will look at it when they have to, and then they know exactly where to go, right? Rather than looking for problems or waiting for that phone call when it's too late. Because if you're waiting for that phone call, if that is the approach, that takes such a big effort to untangle afterwards, right? Because now you've got 10 groups that are upset, and not just one that you need to educate. So here's some more questions. Here's a Hudson from the UK. It feels like you could recommend to all and would never choose to be without it. Well, if I take it away from you tomorrow because we don't want to work with you anymore, how's that for your team?
Yeah, no, we're in a bad spot. We rely so much on data, the historical features of it. We're getting really, really good. If you asked me that question, 3 days into it, I'd probably say, I'm sure I could live without it. We're getting too good with like all the little nuances of it, to where, we can't really function without it. It would be tough for us. So
yeah, I think maybe going back to that Waze, Google Maps, you get so used to it, the convenience, the accuracy of it. Well,
right.
What if you took that away and you go back to paper maps and listening to traffic radio, right? It's completely working. Here's another question by Andrew. With caddy groups, will a caddy get a notification that their group has fallen out of place? So does the communication have to come from the ranger? So in this case, because Derek and the team use the tags, this is really just a beacon that sends information, but we do have a two-way system that also then updates the caddies. But what we have found is that it's best if the caddies are not the pace guardians as much, because they need to be in the player's corner as much as possible, right? And that's where you want to hold them accountable, and you want to obviously educate them, but they want to know, why is this good for me, right? And maybe you've come across some things that they're realizing, this is actually good for me, and I do want my group to flow and not hold anyone up. Like, why is it good for the
caddy? I mean, I would almost disagree with you a little bit, Bodo, where we do want our caddies to be very cognizant of pace. I personally get really mad when they do fall on the player's side too much and they're in the player's camp. They want to get 36 holes in a day. They want to get to their second loop. They want to be, off property as quickly as they can. If it's their second round of the day, caddies don't love 5-hour rounds just as much as players don't love 5-hour rounds. So to that, like, yes and no. Will a caddy get notified that they're playing slow? Probably not. Like I said, it's maybe that kind of first interaction with the ranger of like, hey, what have you noticed? Can you position their bags a little better? We're just a couple minutes off, something kind of quick. We sort of have like a shadow system, like a shadow list of, we sort of know who our 20 fastest caddies are. They'll be getting those kind of primetime slots. So, they'll know without knowing, really. It's said without being said if they're, a fast caddy or a slow caddy. And that conversation might come between them and our caddy master. Hey, they might ask, why am I only getting, one loop at 11 o'clock? I used to get the 9 a.m. That's a very real conversation. Your groups have been historically slow. Like, I have all of your rounds right here. You are not a fast caddy. Well, give me another crack at it. Okay, let's watch your 11 o'clock groups get faster, and we'll bump you back into that kind of like shadow list. So yes and no, the caddies are involved a little bit. It's kind of a fusion between what Bodo and I said.
Yeah, I do think you make a great point, and that's exactly what the opportunity is as a private club, right? We can really now build profiles and identify who are the quicker players, and then create an experience that is suitable for certain types of players. And some players like to play their time, maybe they're not just fit anymore. Well, they need to play appropriate tee times, and now we have data to back that. Here's another great question. Can the system allow me to find additional slots in my tee sheet? So this is absolutely the goal. So with the data that the system spits out, you can really see where can we tighten intervals, for instance, at some points during the day, usually in the morning, because our our course plays quickly for the first few tee times, for instance, and then especially at a daily fee club that runs dynamic pricing, which obviously you guys don't do at Sand Valley, that is golden, right? Can I get another tee time into that early space safely without jeopardizing the rest of the day or those people's experience because I want to ask for more? Yes, absolutely. So this is where this gets really interesting, and obviously additional capacity done safely without the risk to the pace is fantastic from a bottom line point of view. We're on time here. Because there's questions, obviously we're happy to go 5 minutes over, but thank you so much everyone for your time. Derek, thank you for the very informative conversation, really appreciate it. All the best for the season, and please do tell us when do the new courses open for play?
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me. Lido will be open to its members this year. The resort guests who were lucky enough to book a tee time for Lido, I believe they'll be starting in late June, which is very exciting. Sedge Valley is still set to open in 2024, I believe, so that should be up and running. May or may not get some preview play this year, not sure, but by next year, by 2024, the goal is 5 full golf courses at Sand Valley.
Wow. Okay. So lots to look forward to, and I do hope to make a trip. Wisconsin, funny enough, is very close to Tagmarshal because our very first clubs that we started working with are from your home turf up there. So
yeah,
that is a very special place. All right, Derek. Again, thank you. All the best. And
yes, sir.
We'll find you soon.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you.